Please help me welcome R.A. Salvatore.
I was the youngest of 7. I do not need a microphone, but I'll use one. It's great to be here back in Austin. I haven't been here in a decade. We just figured out about 9 years, actually. Oh, and I also just figured out it's actually, I've now written 1 book for every year I've been alive, so it's 51 books now. Yeah. Wow. I started when I was 1. This is a big year for me. I've got 2 series coming to an end this year. I've got a continuation of a series this year. And then next year, we've got several things going on. We got 2 new things starting, and we've got the continuation of the Dritz series next year, and we've got kind of a trip down memory lane next year. And I'll explain as we go here. First, this year, a few years ago, I had an idea for a hero that I wanted to explore. And I wrote a book called The Highwayman. And I really love the character. And I knew he was looking for something. And he was asking a question. And I just wasn't sure if he was going to find the answer. And it took me 4 books to get there. But a couple of months ago, a book called The Bear came out. And it's the last book in the series. And it's where the Highwayman finds his answers. And that was a very important series to me because it goes back to my world of Demon Wars. And if you haven't read the Demon Wars books, and I know most of the Dritz readers probably haven't, please go read Demon Wars. I think it's some of the best stuff I've ever done. In fact, my favorite book ever is a book called Mortalis, which is the 4th book in the Demon Wars saga. But anyway, so I wrote the 7-book series to define the world. Demon Wars is my Forgotten Realms, my Middle-earth, my Shannara, my world, my parameters, my magic system. And then I figured I'd do that and I'd write those 7 books, and then I'd go back there and I'd visit the place and I'd tell more personal stories, like the Dark Elf books are generally personal stories. And that was The Highwayman. That was my first venture back into that world I had created for those 4 books. So that ended last August. And I will go back to the world, but not with the characters in those books. That series is over. See, I can finish the series. Nobody believes me. The other thing that's ending next month, a book called The Sentinels is coming on. This is a trilogy I wrote with my son, Gino. And he did most of the writing because he didn't need me. But I managed to weasel my way in a few places, because these books take place alongside the Halfling's Gem through like Legacy. And so Gino came up with his own heroes to tell the story of Maimon and Joan. But Dritz and his friends were always in the background, showing up at different places. So I got to rewrite some of my favorite scenes from the Dark Elf books, from the early Dark Elf books, from a different perspective. Like when the dwarf is in a fiery chariot doing bombing runs on pirate ships. I got to rewrite that with somebody else watching it. And I had a blast doing it. That series ends in, I think, November 5th it's coming out. So, 3 books, and the Stowaway is the first one, then Shadow Mask, and now the Sentinels. And of course, the continuation this year is Gauntlgrim. And I'll come back to that at the end. Next year, early on, it's a trip down memory lane for me, because the Best of the Realms R.A. Salvatore is coming out. And what that is a short story collection. All the short stories I've written in the Forgotten Realms. And even the one that I wrote about Bruner that was in like Dragon Magazine number 58 back in 1989 or something. That's in there as well. And I also wrote a new story about Wolfgar called To Legend He Goes. And the other thing that was really great about that, doing this book, is I got to write like a page at the beginning of each short story to say what was on my mind, what was I thinking of, why did I want to write about this. So it's annotated, and it was amazing to me because it really did bring me back to all the different time periods of the Dark Elf and this whole journey I've been on. The other thing starting next year is I've agreed to do a comic book series with IDW, New Dritz comics, new material, not adaptations. And I'm writing those with Gino as well. We've got the first one done, the second one's almost done. There'll be six issues is planned anyway. Who knows what'll happen, but that'll be coming out sometime probably around the spring of 2011. And the other new thing next year is I've been working with a company called 38 Studios now for 4 years. And 4 years ago in August, I was at home doing an e-signing. We do e-signings through my website where you can order the books and get them signed and personalized. My web guy orders all the books, loads up a van, drives up to my house from Pennsylvania, and we sit there and spend the day just signing books. And then he mails them all out, and everybody's happy usually. And I was home doing an e-signing, and the phone rings. And I pick up the phone, the guy says, "Can I talk to Bob Salvatore?" I said, "I'm speaking." And he said, "Oh, I can't believe I'm talking to you, man. You're like my favorite author. This is Kurt Schilling." And I'm a Red Sox fanatic, okay? I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts, part of the Red Sox nation before there was a Red Sox nation. And the bloody sock pitcher is on the phone with me? Yeah. So, of course, my answer was, yeah, sure it is. And I looked over, and my wife was looking at me laughing because his publicist had called earlier to make sure it was the right house, you know? So it really was Kurt Schilling. And she's laughing at me. She's like, "Yeah, it's really him." And so I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe I'm talking to you." And he goes, "Oh, I can't believe I'm talking to you." And I'm like, "I can't believe I'm talking to you." And this went on for about 20 minutes back and forth. And he said to me, "You know, I'm getting ready to retire. I'm getting a little long in the arm here, and I don't want to go sell used cars or insurance. I want to do something I really love." And come to find out, he's like the biggest video game geek in the world. So Kurt was starting a video game company, and he wanted to do an MMO, a massive multiplayer online game like EverQuest and World of Warcraft. And he asked me would I come in and design the world for him. And then he told me that our art director was going to be Todd McFarlane of Spawn fame and Spider-Man fame. So Kurt flew my wife and I out to Kansas City. We were on our way to Gen Con in Indianapolis. He flew us out to Kansas City, where the Red Sox got swept by the Royals, by the way. They still liked me, so he didn't blame me. And Todd was there as well. And Todd and Kurt presented what he was trying to do with his little gaming group that he had, guys from EverQuest that he played with. And these are the things they wanted to accomplish in a video game. And so after Todd and I were talking, and I'm like, I love the reasons he's doing it. He's doing it because he loves games. And so we signed up. The two of us decided to come on board and be part of this video game company. And so I got my gaming group together, a group called Seven Swords, and we've done some work before. We did some modules for TSR and Wizards of the Coast. And we created this world, and the 10,000-year history of this world for the video game company, and all the races and where they are and how they relate to each other, and the story of the game itself. And meanwhile, Kurt was going around stealing all the best designers, and we've got the UI director from Blizzard, the server guy from Blizzard, we've got people from Sony, we've got people from Midway, Shiny Studios, all of them, BioWare. We're stealing from all the best. And we know we're standing on the shoulders of giants, so we'll steal some of the giants. And we've got about 150 people in Maynard now, and still working away on the MMO. We're going up to 450 people in the next couple of years. Also, last year, we bought a company called Big Huge Games. And Big Huge Games is known for Rise of Nations and Catan. They do real-time strategy and RPG games. And they were working on an RPG engine to do a massive they had Ken Ralston, who's the guy that did Oblivion, and Morrowind, and Mark Nelson, the other guy who did that game with him, were working for Big Huge Games now, and they were trying to do this open world role-playing game. And so we bought that company, and we gave them our IP, which they fell in love with, this world that I had created. And they made up a story. So next year, hopefully next year, the first product from 38 Studios won't be the MMO. It will be an RPG for PlayStation and Xbox and PC, an open world role-playing game. And I can tell you right now, and I can say this because I'm not the one that did this work, it's amazing. The graphics, the colors, the art is just amazing. It is a visual masterpiece with a pretty cool story and great combat. So for those of you who like gaming, that's coming out next year, something new. Anyway, as far as books go, however, I'm down to one a year now, at least for the time being. So I'll keep up with my age, I hope. Gauntlgrim. Really, this book is the first book of the Neverwinter trilogy, and they're saying that because there's Neverwinter Nights 3 is coming out next year. And they asked me, are you going to be anywhere in this part of the world? And I was planning to be back in Luskin, in that part of the Forgotten Realms. And can you do certain things in your book for us? Because we've got somebody doing Neverwinter Nights 3. So I had this big meeting with Cryptic Studios and Wizards of the Coast, and sure, it all fit. So the things I'm doing in my books are really setting up the game, Neverwinter Nights 3, which comes out next year. But there's something more than that with Gauntlgrim. Gauntlgrim really is the fourth book in transitions. For those of you who don't know, Wizards of the Coast owns Forgotten Realms. This is one of their shared worlds, they call it. It's their sandbox, not mine. And they've decided to advance the timeline pretty dramatically, which really put a lot of pressure on my characters, especially the ones who wouldn't be alive 100 years from now. And so with that kind of forced pressure on me, I had to write the Transitions trilogy. And it was a really painful trilogy. You know, we're changing the world, and I'm changing my core group of heroes in this 23-book journey I've been on. And Gauntlgrim is really the fourth book in Transitions. It's the first book of this new trilogy, whatever, but it's really the finishing point of the changes that come to the Dark Elf and the people around him. And it was really painful to write all of this, but also what happened when I was doing it is something very strange hit me, that I came to realize something about my writing that I think I always knew, and I think you always kind of say, but I never really felt before on this level, that all these years, what I've been doing is a personal journey, and I'm just sharing it. These characters that I create in my books, whether it's Drizzt or Elbrian in Demon Wars or the Highwayman or whatever, what they really are vehicles for me to ask myself all the questions about life. Why are we here? Where are we going? All of those questions. And I don't have the answers, but they're my way of exploring the answers. Well, I shouldn't say I don't have the answers. I should say that the answers change all the time depending on how old you are, I'm finding out. So through the Transitions trilogy, because I really got shaken up from an outside force, from Wizards of the Coast, all of a sudden I started looking at my books in a different way. And I kind of knew this anyway. The book I talked about earlier, Mortalis, was written at a very, very bad time in my life. Really painful time. And all of that pain is on the pages. So I knew that the books were a catharsis. But I don't think I realized before how much of a personal journey it really was for me as I go through all these books. And the things if I look back at like the early dark, I was in my 20s when I wrote The Crystal Shot. I'm in my 50s now. So my perspective has changed. And if I go back and look at the books, I can chart a lot of the things that have happened from my perspective as we go along as well. And the different parts of my life, the different questions I was asking myself as I went through the years of being a younger parent to parent of teenagers, working, being a writer, to being a grandfather now. And I can see all of these changes as we go, and it's a very cool thing for me. So anyway, that's the FAQ, if you will, on where I am now and what's going on and what's coming. Neverwinter Wood is half done. I think that's what we're going to call it. That'll be the book next year. And I'm a little more than half done. I was working on the plane from Boston today. That's what I do on planes, because then I forget that I'm in a little metal box 35,000 feet above the ground. I put on my headphones and put on some music and go to a world where I'm not 35,000 feet off the ground. So anyway, that's what's going on. That's where I'm at. And I want to open this up for questions, because that's always the most fun for me. So who's got a question for me? Yes?